What if I told you that a tiny stretch of water, just 21 miles wide, is at the absolute center of a story that's about way more than just military conflict or the price of gas? No, this is about the future of money itself. It's about whether the entire era of American economic dominance is about to face its biggest challenge ever.
Right here, this is the place where the entire global economy could be brought to its knees. What happens in this one narrow passage could literally snap the financial chains that have held the modern world together for decades.
To really get what's at stake, you have to understand the geography. We're not just talking about some important shipping lane. We are talking about the planet's economic jugular vein, a single critical choke point. This is the Strait of Hormuz, and the best way to think about it is like a giant funnel. All the oil coming from huge producers. We're talking Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the UAE. All of it has to squeeze through this one tiny passage to get to the rest of the world. There's just no other way out by sea.
And to really wrap your head around the scale of this, we're not talking about a fifth of some region's supply. No. This is 1/5 of the entire planet's daily oil consumption, every single day. If this strait slams shut, the global economy doesn't just get a cold, it has a full-blown heart attack.
So let's play this out. Let's walk through a scenario that could set this whole crisis off, a flashpoint that turns this huge economic vulnerability into a global emergency, practically overnight.
It all kicks off with US and Israeli airstrikes on Iran. In Iran's response, it's swift, and it's aimed right at the world's economic weak spot. Their Revolutionary Guard Corps announces the strait is closed. And this isn't some empty threat. Within days, tanker traffic just stops. The choke point is sealed shut.
The immediate impact on the market is just staggering. Oil, which was trading at a stable, $70 a barrel, it just skyrockets. It blows past $80, $90, $100, and it's heading towards $120 a barrel in a matter of days.
And the consequences just ripple outwards instantly. The International Energy Agency immediately calls it the biggest supply disruption in history. Shipping companies suspend all their routes. Stock markets in Asia and on Wall Street just tank. And then you see these second-order effects, like fertilizer prices spiking, because a third of that trade also goes through the strait, which puts the entire global food supply at risk. And Iran? Well, they make it crystal clear that this is just the beginning. They publicly state, expect oil at $200 a barrel. And analysts confirm this isn't just them bluffing. If you adjust for inflation, the all-time high for oil is actually over $200. Iran knows exactly the kind of power it has in this situation.
But here's the thing. This isn't just about causing chaos or making money. Iran's next move reveals what this is really about. They have a very specific and very strategic demand.
Iran offers to partially reopen the strait, but with one single condition. Any oil tanker that passes through has to have its cargo bought and sold not in US dollars, but in Chinese yuan. Now this is not just some political statement. This is a direct assault on the fundamental architecture of global finance.
To understand why this one demand is so revolutionary, so earth-shattering, we need to pull back the curtain on a system that has quietly propped up American power for the last 50 years. So, you're probably asking, what's the big deal? Why the yuan? Why not the euro or the yen? Why specifically demand the Chinese currency? Well, the answer lies in something called the petrodollar system.
See, ever since a landmark deal back in 1974 with Saudi Arabia, all global oil has been priced and sold in US dollars. This system, it's like the invisible foundation of America's economic strength.
So how does this whole thing work? Well, it creates this really simple but incredibly powerful cycle. Because every country on Earth needs oil, every country needs US dollars to buy that oil. This creates a constant, artificial global demand for the dollar. And for the US, it means they can borrow money more cheaply than anyone else, and it means their financial sanctions, cutting countries off from the dollar system, have devastating power. Iran's ultimatum is a direct shot at breaking that very cycle.
Okay, so this ultimatum doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It forces everybody to pick a side, and it basically pours gasoline on a global competition that's been simmering for years.
You've basically got two completely opposing goals crashing into each other. For the United States, the mission is simple: preserve the dollar's role as the world's default currency, period. For them, any precedent of oil being traded in another currency is a major strategic defeat. But for China, this crisis is a golden opportunity. It's a chance to speed up their long-term goal of making the yuan a global currency used for trade everywhere.
And if you just look at the current reality of the oil trade, it's stark. The dollar's dominance is almost total. It's overwhelming. What Iran is doing is trying to use a physical choke point to forcibly carve out a piece of that dominance for another currency.
And the countries feeling the heat the most? It's Asia's industrial powerhouses. Japan gets something like 70% of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz. South Korea, China, India, they are all massively dependent on it. So they're facing this terrible choice: either risk a complete energy catastrophe back home or comply with Iran's demand and make the United States furious.
And all of this brings us to the most critical question of all. What happens next? The world is basically standing at a crossroads with several really perilous paths ahead.
Okay, so there are really three broad ways this could play out. You've got the military option. The US and its allies try to force the strait back open, but that risks a much wider war. Then there's the diplomatic off-ramp, where maybe the yuan demand gets dropped in exchange for other concessions. Or, and this is probably the most dangerous one for the US, is quiet compliance, where countries, just to get the oil flowing again, start quietly agreeing to the terms, and the petrodollar system begins to unravel, not with a bang, but with 1,000 little deals.
What we're watching here is a rare collision of military, energy, and monetary conflict all in one place. The Strait of Hormuz has always been a physical choke point. We've known that for years. But now it's being used as a lever to try and reshape the entire world's financial order. And that leaves us with one final, very urgent question. Is this the crack that finally shatters the whole thing?